Good morning. Welcome to our Action for Healthy Kids webinar on reopening. What's the plan to keep kids healthy? This is one of a series of webinars Texas Action for Healthy Kids has hosted over the summer to help school health advisory councils understand what role they can play and where they might want to focus their energy as we continue to deal with COVID-19 and all the repercussions for our families and our students. While this is a Texas webinar, the information we will be sharing is relevant to all districts working to make sure kids stay healthy as they return to their learning environments. So I'm Michelle Smith. I'm the Texas State Coordinator for Action for Healthy Kids. And joining me is our volunteer chair, Alice Kirk, with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, and she will be helping us monitor questions. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. You can listen in with your phone or you can use computer speakers. If you're having issues with your computer volume, you can log out, log back in, and then choose to call in or use the phone option. All attendees will be muted, so you'll need to use the question box at the bottom of the screen. We also have a chat box, so if you want to say hi or you have comments you want to share with others, you can do that through the chat box as well. The webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out a link to the recording along with some print resources that I will mention at the end of the webinar. So let's get started. Just a little bit about Action for Healthy Kids. We're a national organization that was founded in 2002 when Dr. David Satcher declared there was an obesity epidemic and engaged all the states, to identify strategies to work with schools where children spend the majority of their time. Teams from across the country convened and developed plans for focusing on improving nutrition and physical activity environment. Over time, we've evolved our focus, and while we still feel obesity is a serious issue, we realize that to truly make an impact, we needed to modify our approach and expand our focus. As we focus on helping develop family-school partnerships and work to address root causes of child health crises, we're incorporating all the tenets of the whole community, whole child, whole school, whole child model into our plans. We've embraced 3 foundations for lifelong health: optimal nutrition and physical activity, safe, supportive environments, and stable and nurturing child relationships. We have a host of resources online at Action for Healthy Kids, and Texas has been extremely involved in child health, including working with Partnership for Healthy Texas on state policy, and also working with state agencies on webinars and resources, and providing workshops and grants. I would like to recognize some of the organizations who have been working specifically on the School Health Advisory Council workshops and webinars and resources. Over the past several months, we've been meeting, and we've also engaged several of our model school districts who have great school health advisory councils. And we want to thank them for all the work they've put in over the last few months to try to help support all SHACs. Today we have an extremely important topic: reopening schools, virtual and or in person, and how administrators are approaching the issues and how they're working with parents and SHACs. We have 2 very special individuals representing district leadership with us here this morning. Dr. Charles Dupre, who is the Superintendent of Fort Bend ISD, which is the 8th largest school district in the state of Texas with more than 78,000 students. Under his leadership, Fort Bend has received the 2018 HEB Excellence in Education Award as the best school district in the large district category. In 2019, Dr. Dupre was named the Region 4 Superintendent of the Year. He earned his Bachelor of Business Administration from Harding University and a master's degree in Educational Administration at the University of Houston. He holds a doctorate in Educational Leadership from Lamar University. Our second guest is Gail Grayle James, who received her Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering from the University of California, Berkeley, and her secondary education teaching credentials in mathematics and physical sciences from California State University in Bakersfield. She was elected to the Fort Bend Board of Trustees in May 2012 and was reelected for her 3rd term in 2018. Grayle served 2 consecutive years as board president and is a founding member of Go Public Gulf Coast. In addition to her school board role, Grayle currently serves the community through Gamma Phi Beta sorority, the Junior League of Houston, and as board chair of the Fort Bend Cares Foundation. This year will begin her 7th year of service on the Fort Bend ISD School Health Advisory Council, or SHAC. During this time, she has promoted district policy to strengthen all components of whole school, whole community, whole child wellness model. Grayle and her husband David have 3 children, all of who graduated from the Fort Bend ISD schools. I want to thank you both for sharing your time this morning, particularly considering not only are we facing a pandemic, we were staring down the face of a hurricane last night. We were blessed that it did not come in on our Texas coast, and we are keeping all of our neighbors in Louisiana in our thoughts and prayers this morning. I will be asking questions, and then we'll open it up for our other attendees' questions. So as you are listening, if you would like more information on something or it triggers a question, be sure and enter those in the question box. And Alice will be keeping an eye on those, and if need be, will jump in and share with us. So let's get started. First question, we would like to know, we know that parents have a lot of concerns about the school or the remote learning, returning to campus, everything from school meals to childcare. How have you engaged parents in your reopening plans? Is everybody unmuted? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So I'll jump into that. So we have consistently, we do a great job in Fort Bend of engaging parents on a good day. So as we're dealing with these types of issues, that remains at the forefront of our efforts. And so even so far back as March and throughout the summer, we have been engaging parents in focus groups about what's on their minds, their concerns, the things that they want to see, the things that we need to address as we're educating their children. So specifically around this pandemic, we've put together, back in June, we did a very robust survey asking what was on their mind, what are they concerned about? And we had about 60% of our parents express concern about sending their kids back into schools. But then we said, well, if we gave them a list of about 11 different health and safety measures, things like hand sanitizer, wearing masks, those kinds of things. And when they checked their concerns compared to that list, their level of concern really dropped dramatically, and we saw much more interest and positivity about coming to school if we enacted some of those procedures. We've also done focus groups directly. We've done surveys with over 15,000 folks participating. We've done focus groups with hundreds of parents that bring their voice to the table, and that's actually gotten easier using the new virtual environment of Zoom, because they don't have to come to a scheduled meeting somewhere. They can get online for an hour and visit with us and go back to their day. So I'm very pleased with the level of parent engagement we've had during the last 5 months.
Sounds like you've had some good communications with your parents. It looks like you have some strong open lines. How have you given real-time updates? Do you use much social media?
We do. Well, so let me tell you, let me go back to your first question real quickly. Going forward, we have just recently formed an advisory committee. We were working primarily with healthcare professionals to make many of our decisions. We've now expanded that to include parents, business leaders, and other community members as well, to make sure the voices are at the table as we make real-time decisions. Communications is something I think we execute very well and under crisis in Fort Bend ISD. We use videos, a lot. Parents are used to hearing directly from me via video. Our board president will record videos from time to time regarding major actions by the board or updates from the board, but generally I do videos. I run a blog. We use social media significantly as well. We have an individual dedicated to that. So we do all the things. We send push through Blackboard messages to all of our our community parents, including text messaging, emailing, and then we also have the videos that we push through those same means. So very robust communication. That's one of the things parents have expressed great positivity about. And I love it when they say, well, they're not doing that in other districts. You know, when they talk to their friends in other districts, they tell their friends, hey, we know what's going on in real time. They always know what the board has talked about, usually within 24 to 48 hours. They know about major decisions of districts. They know where we're going, not just where we are in real time.
And you're doing that through social media, or do you have like an email or all of the above? I mean,
all of the above. You know, we have many, many parents who engage via social media. That's just a thing we have to use today. But we also have a lot of parents, and you know, we have grandparents raising their children that don't really engage with social media. And then we also think about our community that is outside. We refer to what are 70 percenters, the 70% of our community that do not have children in schools. They still need to know and want to know what's going on. And that's the most difficult group. They get a touch from social media, but we are also pushing, we use the system called Blackboard, where every parent and staff member, they are set up in that system. So we automatically push a lot to them, all of this same information. You know, we try to abide by the rules, tell them 7 times in 7 different ways. So that's why we try to use a video, an email, and we have relied on even the mainstream media quite a bit as well. We use our website. We have a very robust web page on all these topics. But as I said, that 70%, they're consistently hard to access if they're not part of our system, if they're not somebody we already have a relationship with. So we do magazines and mailers periodically to those folks, but we have to rely more on the mainstream and newspapers and media to get access to some of those individuals.
How have you engaged, or how's your SHAC been involved in the whole pandemic process and reopening, and what role have they played?
Very limited until recently, honestly. So much of what we were doing was crisis management, and we wanted everyone's opinion along the way, but it was hard to organize a group like SHAC or other advisory group. So when we began to form our advisory group several weeks ago, our go-to was the SHAC to begin to form that group. And so we have several members of the SHAC, and then they've also suggested other members that they would like to see, and then we've invited others from the community as well. So we're just now in a place where we're more robustly engaging the SHAC as a partner in this work.
Grayle, how has the board participated in this process, and how have y'all been able to work with the School Health Advisory Council?
Well, if you're asking about that in terms of the pandemic, the board's been very engaged from the very beginning. In fact, had an emergency meeting at the very outset of our spring break, and helped give direction to the district. And then we've met periodically through the spring and the summer, and worked with the superintendent and his administrative team, both so that they could hear from us our concerns and priorities and make sure that our district priorities remained in place. And then also so we could understand what their plans were going forward. But as Dr. Dupre alluded to, that's sort of our model of how we do everything in Fort Bend, whether it's in a crisis and emergency, or whether it's just in planning school in a regular year, or anything that we're involved in. We really try to align our team and communicate with the public thoroughly.
So there's a lot of variables that you've obviously had to consider for reopening and implementing effective remote learning. What's been the biggest challenge around keeping kids healthy when you're talking about reopening? And what's concerned the board the most about this whole?
Yes, so that's a great question, and I know Dr. Dupre will be able to add some specifics to that. I think one of the board's primary goals was making sure that the community was engaged in the process and that we were hearing from parents and families to understand their level of what their concerns were, to make sure we were hearing from our staff and all of our employees to understand what their needs and concerns were, and then hearing from members of our community and experts in the field to understand what was actually happening, and this is ongoing, what is actually happening in the Fort Bend community, in our cities and municipalities that are part of our district. So I'd say those have been the primary concerns, and the administration's brought great information to us, including a panel of medical experts a couple of weeks ago that participated in our meeting and was giving interpretations of data and medical interpretations of information to the medical community, and it was very, very informative.
I would add, Grayle alluded to this, but I want to reinforce what she said. Fort Bend has been focused on wellness for a very long time. This is, I often say the benefit, the major advantage we have had is that we have a very highly experienced board that is a well-developed team, and the superintendent has been here in his 8th school year. So we have all worked very well together. I'm working with substantially the same board that hired me, and we've got a great relationship. And so along with that comes a robust strategic plan, our profile of a graduate, which focuses on the whole child and social emotional well-being. And that all comes from board adopted policy and their mission and their vision. So when you put all that together, what it means in Fort Bend is we're doing the same thing this year that we did last year pre-pandemic. It looks different in terms of how we're executing, but our core beliefs, our mission, our promises, our commitments are exactly the same. And that means the social, emotional well-being, the physical well-being of our kiddos and our staff are the high priority, just as they have been for a long time.
You mentioned the social, emotional well-being, and that's one of the issues I think a lot of the districts are facing is how do you address the mental health issues around teachers and staff and students all as we move into this whole learning environment for the fall?
Well, I will tell you, there's a direct relationship to the physical well-being. You kind of know that conceptually, but we had an experience recently because we've employed, and I'll kind of tie back to your previous question, we have a robust list of health and safety protocol items that we're executing on. Cleaning patterns in our buildings, masks for everybody that comes in, temperature taking, all of those things. But we had a situation, I actually had a teacher resign on the first day of school because she observed that the administrators in the building during their back to school PD, there were like 3 or 4 administrators all on a Zoom call with all the teachers. The teachers began to discern that all of those administrators were in the same room. Even though they were on their own computers, they said, wait a minute, they're all in the same room and none of them were wearing masks. And the teachers, it was like, well, if they're not taking this seriously, then how can I know they're going to take it seriously when I'm in the building and when the kids are in the building? And so it really brought to life that direct connection that you've got these great systems in place for the physical well-being, and so you've got to maintain that for the emotional well-being, because people have got to trust that you're going to execute with fidelity, that you're going to really live what those documents say. You're not just going to put it out there, because all it takes is somebody walking down the hall without their mask on. Kids are going to see it, parents will see it, staff will see it. And so you've got to take it seriously. Leaders have to model it, and they have to have high accountability for doing that. So I think that's just a fundamental way of putting those systems in place and then living with them in a way that lets people, gives them assurance, you are taking my well-being seriously. We've had teachers now we've had teachers across the board in our district, some that are willing to come back to work in the buildings, some that have been very reluctant. some that thought they were ready, but then the minute they walk in the building, I mean, literally, I heard from some principals that we had teachers that, because of the isolation of the last 5 months of just being home largely alone and isolated, and then the fear of the virus, when they came back into the building thinking they were ready, they immediately broke down, melted down, and said, "I just can't do it." And they had to go home, and they still are working from home. And so we take that very seriously. And so we're trying to take a very gentle touch. We've got a very robust employee assistance program where we're continually telling our staff, this is available to you. Call, talk to a counselor. You know, if you don't have a physical health risk other than exposure, we're going to do everything we can to control exposure to protect you. But if you're not otherwise risky health-wise, then maybe you would benefit from a few sessions with a counselor, someone to help you process your mental well-being about what you can and cannot do. So we do a good job with that. We have counseling centers. We opened 8 counseling centers for students and their families last year, fortunately, before all this started. And so those are up and running. So we've got communities in schools. We have lots of school counselors, as well as our counseling centers with professional licensed counselors. And just the touching base and building relationships and expressing care and compassion also goes a long way. And I'm talking a lot, I'll let Grayle kind of jump in, but this is a big, broad area of concern for us, because we can't teach a kid if they don't feel like their well-being is tended to.
Well, and that sums it up right there. We can't teach a child if their well-being isn't taken care of, and our teachers and the rest of our staff can't perform their jobs effectively if their well-being isn't taken care of. So we've really addressed that and discussed it many times, and administration has addressed it very thoroughly as described.
The School Health Advisory Council has its own set of mandates of things that it works on, and the legislature has identified other areas as time goes on. But they also answer specifically to the board. Has your board asked anything specific of your SHAC in the past, or coming forward through the pandemic, of what you feel they should be focusing on?
Yeah, so I'll answer that. So absolutely, we have, and we're fortunate that, you know, our SHAC is really and truly parent-led. So any parents that are in the audience and listening in, please, you know, own that and be part of the health solutions in your school district and in your community. We have great community partners that have joined us as well, and those work together. And then, of course, the staff members. But the board each year asks for a report from the SHAC as to what they have accomplished and what their asks are, or what their ideas are and requests are going forward. So that's been one way. We also, our board governs, very aligned to policy. We say if it isn't in policy, it doesn't exist. And so we try to put all the things that are near and dear to us in our policy, and then hand that off to administration so they know what to execute. And so we've really worked with our SHAC to develop policy that addresses health and wellness, and that can bring to life the initiatives that we want to see going forward. And we've, some of our earliest discussions were about recess and what recess should look like, and what PE should look like, and what the difference is, and can you punish a kid by taking away their recess, and things like that. And most recently, we had a conversation in the boardroom about food, and food as a reward, and food and nutrition, and how those things are related. And so we asked the SHAC to bring us information so that we can be more informed on issues, but we also asked them to help us develop policy so that administrative staff can execute on those issues.
That's exciting to hear. I know it's not necessarily that way in a lot of districts. And the relationship you have with your SHAC is very encouraging. And I hope that those who are listening in can go back if they're not having that good of a relationship with their board and their school administration and work on it. And I have a cat that's trying to walk across my computer.
Well, while you deal with the cat, let me let me speak to one more thing related to that. So if people feel that they don't have a good relationship with their SHAC or with those folks in charge of health and wellness in their district, I think there's a couple of avenues that they can pursue. One is I would recommend that they attend a school board meeting, and all school boards in Texas, and I'm pretty sure across the country, have an opportunity for public audience items. And a community member or parent can speak to the board and to the administration present about, whoops, sorry, that was my doorbell. Well, work from home, and this is what you have, and this is what happens.
Cats, doorbell.
Anyway, so and now my telephone's ringing, so there you go. It's all happening at once. If people can speak to their school board and in the public address section of a meeting, and they can share the things that are important to them. And we've had people address our school board about sleep, about nutrition, all sorts of things. And the board learns from that. And it's not a quick, nothing is quick about school board and school district governance or administration. Dr. Dupre can tell you that, especially in a large district like ours. But there has to be continual learning and information, and community experts, parents' concerns, all of those things are important to the school board, and they can be brought in a public meeting.
Yeah. And I want to interject in that because I think it's important for the audience to understand we did not get here overnight. And I think Grayle has alluded to that, but from the superintendent perspective, often what happens, and I'll just be candid from my seat, you kind of let the coordinator or director who works with that kind of manage the SHAC, and you kind of do your thing. But we began to see that our SHAC had a lot of value to add. The board wanted to access that value. So that means I had to be a little more engaged than I previously was. I'll talk directly to the chair from time to time to help move work along to make sure I understand the SHAC's intent. The superintendent can't just delegate it 2 or 3 levels below. Again, depending on the size of the district, we're a very, very large district. So, there's people 3 or 4 layers below me who are managing that direct relationship. But I've asked the deputy superintendent to be more directly involved. She attends meetings on my behalf. I engage. I try to attend at least 1 or 2 meetings a year. So it does take everyone truly giving value to the effort. And I don't know, Grayle might have something to add to this, but I think by the superintendent being directly engaged, that helps staff step up their game for sure. But I don't know how, sometimes it's hard for a staff if a board would not be willing to engage. It's hard for staff to drive that. Short of perhaps the superintendent being a little more directly involved with the board, saying, hey, this is my level of involvement. I would like you to partner with us. I think the superintendent can leverage that relationship with the board if it's necessary. In my case, it wasn't, because the board's highly involved. They wanted to be, and they wanted me to be. But that has really brought a lot more value to our efforts engaging the SHAC with meaningful work.
Yes, and so let me speak to that, because honestly, before Dr. Dupre was a superintendent and when my children were younger, there were some health and wellness issues that came to me as a parent of children in the district. And so what do I do with those concerns? Well, as a parent, I might speak to the principal or to my child's teacher or something on a local level. But as I've taken my role on the school board, I found that I could ask questions and become more educated about those topics which would then lead me to be able to make meaningful change. What were the things I needed? I needed to know the struggles that students were having. And it may even be before Dr. Dupre was superintendent, but I asked a question about food deserts and food access. And maybe this was right around the time he was coming. And my question was, well, why aren't we doing a universal breakfast and lunch program at these schools where we know there exist food deserts? And there was not immediate action to that, but I'm proud to say that 6 years later, we're having a pandemic, and one of the first responses of the administration was to make sure that all students and all children that lived in our region, even if they weren't our own students, had access to food at various campuses. So change can happen, but it takes the leadership learning and understanding the problems and the situation in order to make change, especially in a systemic and a large scale way. And that's our situation in Fort Bend.
I want to remind everybody, if you do have questions, be sure and put them in the question Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Y'all mentioned, and I was really excited to hear that, your focus on the physical child. I know some of the districts I've been talking to are concerned that as the school's day is restarting on campus or they're trying to do remote, PE and health are kind of being, pushed aside a little bit. How is your district working to make sure that health and PE and physical activity are still?
Well, I want to speak on that first, because I want to say, the school board has set certain expectations, and it's in policy that we have so many minutes of health and we have so many minutes of PE. And when we talked about going back to school and it might be online and we're going to start online, that did not give a pass to the administration to say, oh, PE, we don't need that. No, because our belief is that if the child isn't physically active, they won't be successful in learning. So I'll let Dr. Dupre tell you the nuts and bolts of that.
Well, and so Grayle just spoke truth, right? Because I know how the board feels about that. And personally, I feel that way because I believe in our profile of a graduate. I believe in well-being and wellness for our kiddos. But some of the first conversations come down to, well, we have to have them in all the core subjects, and PE can just become an elective or it can be optional. And I had to say very plainly, that is not going to happen. I mean, that's where leadership is critical, because I often talk about there's 4 frames. One of the frames that we operate from is structural. Just make it happen, and this is how the schedule is going to look, and this is all we can do. But I said, no, we also have to consider the human frame and the other things, because it's not just they need PE. Yeah, it's hard to do PE from a distance through a screen, but maybe half of the conversation in PE is that challenge and the wellness conversation about, hey, life is different. Don't let yourself just sit on the couch or in your bed playing video games all day, every day. Make sure you're up, move, because kids value that relationship with the coach. They like their coaches. And if coach is saying, get up and go outside, they're going to do that. But I had to say very clearly to some of my team members, no, we will do PE just like they do in a building. It's part of the regular out-class rotation. Even if it's virtual, we are not going to set that aside and make it optional and all of that. So, and again, I'm not being negative about the team. They were trying to solve some serious big problems. But you've got to come to the table with the priorities as you're solving the problems. And I knew it was important to the board, and it's certainly important to me because that we maintain that level of engagement for our children.
And let me add one more thing in there that he didn't touch on. And we've practiced this in some of our meetings, and I know our Fort Bend ISD SHAC regularly practice this, is we do and have built into our curriculum some action-based learning. And we've been doing brain breaks and things like that are action-based. And those are easy ways that even if a curriculum doesn't have things built in, there are lots of resources available for brain breaks and action-based learning activities that can help children when they're doing online learning and are struggling with the long period of time concentrating and focusing on a screen. Just the same way that it helps them when they're in a physical classroom to concentrate on their learning if they have a chance to move and be active at some point during the lesson. So that's a little bit not my role on the school board, but it is something I know that's happening, and I know that it's been a priority to the curriculum folks in our district.
It's so encouraging to hear this, and I hope that others find it encouraging. What has been your biggest challenge from the child nutrition department? Are y'all, I mean, I know that I've talked to different schools, and some of them are busing meals out, others are having them picked up at the school. How are y'all dealing with the whole child nutrition?
Really, we have not had major issues. You know, we decided early on, back in March, we fed thousands of children every single day. A constant theme, and if I'm going to be honest, was the child nutrition workers felt like they were being placed in harm's way when other staff were not. So they got a little extra pay for coming into work in the kitchens back in the spring and during the summer. Now we've kind of transitioned to all of our staff is working. No one's getting extra compensation. Some staff are just required, you got to be in a workplace, but we've also since now gotten more comfortable with the health and safety protocols, the PPE and the social distancing and all the things that are required. So we have had some outbreaks in some of our cafeteria workers earlier in the summer. That has not happened recently, but that's not to say it couldn't happen again, right? Because they're working in that area together. But really, we're still running kitchens right now. You know, we're substantially closed as a district to student. We have about 1,000 kids district wide, and again, we didn't really get into this too much at the beginning, but we're serving, you know, close to 79,000 students. So about through all of those, we've got only about 1,000 special education students who have the greatest needs that are coming to our buildings right now daily. And we're running learning centers for about 2,000 students. So relatively speaking, we have very few students. So we are not standing up kitchens in every building for those few kids. We are transporting food to the learning centers for the kids and those kinds of things. But we've maintained a focus on still, I've pushed even during the spring, you know, when there was kind of an inclination to want to do SHAC lunches and SHAC meals for distribution, I insisted that we do at least one hot meal a day for the students who are picking up. I said, we just can't not do at least one per day. And our staff is strong. We've got a great director of that division, and everybody who works, they're there they're missional in their work. They care about the kids and they want to do that. But again, sometimes I think the constraints, it's hard to overlook the constraints that you're dealing with. But when challenged, they always rise to the occasion. And so sometimes you just have to push a little bit harder and ask a few hard questions to help them see, okay, we can do this and we're going to do this, and they're going to make it happen.
Let me speak just a moment to that as well, and from the board's perspective. So one of the things that we put in place a few years ago now is one of our district goals is surrounding each school and community, school community in a collaborative community, and building partnerships with faith-based organizations and nonprofits and schools partnering with one another and so forth to help meet needs. So I think during this pandemic has been one example of when we've really leveraged this quite a bit, and we've seen people want to do something to help. So what is it that they could do? Very early on, we did some drives to collect PPE for the child nutrition departments, and we you know, bags and baggies to put the food in to give to the children, things like that. As that's evolved, we've partnered with food banks now. We've had, I'm not sure how many how many drive-through food distributions at our campuses. But all of that is through partnerships with nonprofits. And many of these efforts have been staffed by not our staff, but by faith-based organization volunteers. We've just provided maybe the parking lot or whatever, and the community has come out to support our students. And I saw in the chat people asking, you know, how do we sort of reinvent ourselves? And I would say it's looking for those opportunities. If you can identify the need, there's an opportunity there, and who in your community and who is available to fill that need and who has a desire. And some people can fill it through showing up and handing boxes of food, and some can send money so you can buy bags to put that food in. And everybody has a place that they can fit in, and we've embraced that in our district, and it's been successful.
Right.
That was going to be one of my next questions, was how is the community working with the district on addressing?
Well, there you go.
Right.
You're a mind reader.
Yes.
There's some interesting comments. Sorry, I was reading the chats as we go. Like you said, there's some interesting comments. There was one question: how are you continuing to communicate and implement wellness policies to staff and family? So we have these policies. How are you getting those out?
I would say it's just part of our routine work. I think from the staff, so from the staff perspective, everything we're doing is part of their training on a regular basis. All of the social, emotional aspects of our work, the physical well-being, the physical health, all the components of our student health and wellness, that's part of what they were trained in. And so they expect to do that as part of their classes. For example, all of our students are engaged in social emotional learning discussions on a regular basis right now, because we know how important that is. As part of that, again, it extends into the physical well-being as well. And by maintaining, as we talked about earlier, the fidelity of our PE programs and those things as part of our daily schedule. So I think, but from the parent and student perspective, I don't know that they see the policies. I don't know that they're available to them, but I think what they see is evidence of our executing on those policies. And so that's what I hear positive feedback from our community, that they like the fact, they like, as Grayle was mentioning, I mean, we've got a robust partnership. We call it collaborative communities in Fort Bend ISD, and it's really grown exponentially during this pandemic. Just exciting. But I think they see evidence of the work, they see evidence of the policies, and they see their teachers and campus staff executing these things on a day-to-day basis. I don't know that they read, this is what the district is supposed to do, but they feel it and they're living it.
Have y'all done any outreach to other districts or shared best practice or any of your, which I think are good solutions?
Right, so we do that all the time in the sense that I as a trustee regularly have other trustees asking me, how are you handling this? What are you doing for this? I heard you're doing this and that and the other thing. How did that get started? And so that regularly happens to me, and I'm certain it happens with Dr. Dupre as well.
Yes, that's exactly right. One of the things our board, again, when you've got stability on the board the way we do, and you're winning awards, you're doing really good work that's recognized, the board members, they have their own network. And I know Grayle, because I see evidence of it, because she's at an event with other board members, I'm getting her emails saying, hey, can we share this? Can we send this? What did we do? And all of our 7 trustees they're sharing that with other districts. During this pandemic in particular, I mean, I already meet with other superintendents on a regular basis, but during the pandemic, I'm on calls with superintendents 2 to 3 to 4 times a week. And we're all talking about all of these types of things, how we're doing this work. So there's lots and lots of sharing that goes on, I think, across district boundaries.
We have someone that's talking about their district had started school back on August 10th. And there's some question as to whether parents feel it's unfair, why they should send their kids to school if they could stay home in the comfort and flexibility of their own home. How do you encourage children and parents when they question if they've made the right decision based on, comfort and flexibility versus safety concerns on face-to-face?
Well, I'll start out on that one because we're not in a situation where we have a lot of face-to-face going on right now. We will be exploring that and determining when it's time to go back to face-to-face. And as Dr. Dupre mentioned earlier, we have an advisory committee as a subcommittee of our SHAC that is going to be helping advise administration around that. I think that I think that it kind of becomes a twofold thing. It becomes at least for us, how it has presented itself, how much staff is available and willing to be present. And that's a critical piece. We have a core belief and a commitment statement for our district that we will provide a positive culture and a safe working and learning environment for all of our students. And that's one of our core beliefs. And safe means mentally safe as well. And as Dr. Dupre said, we have to be sure that we're taking care of our staff because we know we need them in the long run. I've particularly advocated for a long-term look at this. Well, we all want to get back and we want to be with our friends and we want to accelerate our learning. We can't do that and cause harm to have a short-term gain and not a long-term success. So those are the things that we're talking about and considering, but I'll let Dr. Dupre give a little more specifics.
Well, I'm going to tell you, this is one of the heart of the issue that we're dealing with in many ways, and that's why we put together the advisory committee. But we're also working more to try to do more education around these topics because there's so much misinformation being shared. The politics around it, all the opinions and perspectives, it makes it very hard for parents to feel comfortable because they don't know who they can trust. So what I try to keep reminding our community is your public school system has always behaved in an honorable way, transparent, with integrity. So I keep reminding them, you still know us, and we have these great systems in place. And if you want to send your kid, we can't, I'm pretty honest with them. I can't promise they're never going to get the virus. But I can also tell you, you can never tell me they definitely got it at school either. Because we're all living in a community, and even families today who thought they did everything right to protect themselves, it got into their home. And so I know parents, they want to say, well, I can't send them to school because then they're going to get it at school. They might. We can't say they won't, but you can't say it's coming from the school either. So we're trying to have just transparent conversations about that. But we have a pandemic management response plan that's on our website that lays out the specific indicators we are using that we're evaluating. And there's district level, there's school level, and then there's community level. And the community was important because we all live and work in the broader Houston area. Lots of people come into our, with 11,000 staff, people are driving from all over the place into our community to work in our schools. So we have to look at what's going on. But that information is considered in tandem with our own student absenteeism, staff absenteeism rates, how many staff have taken leave? Because as Grayle said, you can't have school if you don't have staff willing and able to come to school. So we're looking at our own internal data about what's going on in our schools, and we're rating each school independent of each other as well, because it may be possible to run out of our 81 schools, we might be able to have 80 of them open, but need to close one for 2 weeks while they quarantine. So we're trying to keep our decision-making as localized as possible. And I think that gives parents comfort as well. but really just the messaging of, just you've got to be able to know. It's the same thing we're trying to teach our kids, right? We want them to be critical thinkers and be able to analyze carefully the data they're seeing online and in the media. Who can they really trust? What is factual? What's truth? And what are you going to make your decision based on? So that there's a lot of that type of conversation we're engaged in.
How do you see the
Dr. Dupre,
sorry?
oh, sorry. There is a question that has come up that kind of adds to your comment, Dr. Dupre, related to the communication and the access with technology. So one of our attendees is asking about what the school district is doing to bridge the digital divide for those students who may not have access to technology, and maybe how are they getting their information?
Yes, so several different things. So first of all, what we have found is the vast majority of our community, they've got digital devices of some sort. And I want to be careful about that because I'm not assuming they all have internet connectivity at home or that they all have laptops or tablets. But most everybody's got a cell phone in their hand of some sort. So we use a lot of text messaging and phone calling across the board to get information to parents. But what we have found in the spring is we had a significant portion that we just couldn't get to. And for us, it was about 2 to 3% of our overall student enrollment. So, the spring was one thing, but as we made efforts to reach out to them, but if they didn't participate, it wasn't compulsory attendance or anything. And some parents just said, I'm not doing it. Just do what you're going to do. Now, for the fall, compulsory attendance is in place. So as of last Friday, I guess, we've had about 96% of all of our students engage online. Now, to help that happen, though, and to bridge some of the connectivity gap, we have issued about 5,000 hotspots to help families access the internet from their home. We have distributed over 25,000 laptop computers and tablets into homes that we're loaning these children from from our inventory so that they have a device. Because the way we're doing it now, where every student is required to be online with their teacher at certain times throughout the day, every student needs their own device. So, but we've made sure we've opened the doors there. We're working on regional and state and national level connectivity issues. But that's not going to be a tomorrow solution, right? That's going to take time. But what we're doing, even right now, we've got 2 very small communities that we just can't get them connected at all. Even with hotspots, they just do not have connectivity. So we've run the gamut with 3 or 4 different companies, carriers, trying to get them access. So what we're doing now is we're picking up those children and driving them to their school where they're getting access to technology. They're still doing digital learning through the laptop we've distributed, but we're having to get them to a school so they can do that as an extension of what we're referring to as our learning center program. But it was our only choice because otherwise those kiddos were not going to have any way to connect and to continue learning. So we're doing everything we can, as most districts are, but we're just always going the extra mile to connect and to get those kids engaged with their learning, because equity is the greatest risk in this whole package. If the haves and the have-nots, that divide is big on our best day, and it's even wider right now. And when we have children who may want to learn and they may have the device in their hand, but they may not have a parent who has the cultural capital, as I refer to it, the background, the knowledge, to be the language skills. You can go down the list of all the barriers some of our families face, and the parent may love their child and want to help them, but they don't know how. And so we're really doing everything we can to help all of our students connect to the best way possible with our schools right now.
Yeah, let me jump in and just also say, I want to just emphasize something that Dr. Dupre said, and that is internet access and connectivity. And that is an area that parents and community members that are listening to this, we need to advocate for that as a availability across our entire country for children to have access to the internet. If they don't, they are behind even in, should school go back to normal, even in research and all those kinds of efforts. If children don't have reliable internet connectivity, they are at a disadvantage. So we need to advocate for that, is my point. We need to advocate for that. And then one other thing that I know we discussed about, or discussed in our school district, I don't know that we're utilizing it yet, but it could be a tool that others could utilize. And that is installing hotspots on your school buses and driving them to a location that is a neighborhood where there's a difficulty connecting, or near a park or something like that, where kids could have a device and connect to that hotspot that's on a school bus at various known times and on a schedule. So that's just a thought.
I have one more question here, and it looks like we're going to have to wrap things up. Longview ISD, all the students were provided an iPad. Is Fort Bend providing a laptop or iPad for every student, or you're just loaning them out, from what I was hearing?
So our policy here, we call it one to need. So many of our students have devices, whether it be a tablet or a laptop at home. On our typical day in our schools, certain grade levels, upper grade levels, have laptops that the district provides on a 2-to-1 basis for use in the building. Younger kids will use tablets. So we've distributed in accordance with that. Some of our younger kids have tablets to use at home, but we've distributed, like you heard me say, I think we've only distributed maybe 5,000 tablets, but we have done like 25,000 laptops. So we have both going on in our district right now.
Okay. Any last questions quickly? I'm gonna share my screen back to do a couple of wrap-up things. So just quickly, we do have a couple of more webinars coming up. We have one on School Health Advisory Council September 15th, and a 2-part series on vaping October 6th and 7th. Watch for additional webinars as we move forward. We have a couple of resources we will send out. One is a guideline on School Health Advisory Councils. What should you be doing? What should you be looking at to try to support your school district and your administration and your board as you move forward? And then a couple of letters that we developed. Our coordinator down in El Paso worked on this, and we love you. Thank you, Kristen. One that can go to school boards and administrators about the need for physical education, physical activity, and health. And then a second one that supports the school nutrition staff and what they're doing for the schools as we move forward. So these are just some tools that you can use to support health and child nutrition in your district. Also, we'll have some links within the PDF that we'll send you of the program. There's not slides because this was more of a panel discussion, but we will send out a PDF of the slides we did have and the links to some resources on our Texas team page and to other webinars that we've recorded over the years that you might find useful. Alice, are there a couple more questions I'm seeing there?
No, really, their comments, just again, applause, and they're very thankful for the comprehensive answers that both Dr. Dupre and Grayle gave, and really appreciated the information about the virtual hotspots via buses. I know our rural school district is utilizing that as well, and it's been working well. So.
Well, Dr. Dupre and Grayle, thank you so much for participating this morning. I think this has been very useful. I hope that everyone that attended has taken away something that they can use or share with others that will help make this fall a little more effective, or help your SHAC get engaged a little more build a little confidence. Fort Bend has always been a model for us. Your SHAC members have participated in many of our webinars, and it's nice to be able to say thank you to you for engaging your SHAC and letting them be such a big part of what your district does around child health and wellness. I think that's it for this webinar. If y'all have any closing comments.
Well,
Thanks
also,
for having us today.
yeah, I want to say one thing more, because it didn't come up today, but it's important to our school district and maybe to some of the others listening. I would encourage you to engage your students in the conversation. Engage your students in the conversation. Our school board has had great value. We've had a variety of students come and speak to us about various topics. We've included them in different panels and advisory teams we've had, and I would highly recommend that, especially in the situation that we're in during the pandemic, but in all things that have to do with their health and wellness. They will add a tremendous value, and they're very passionate, and they want to be part of solutions. So don't be afraid to ask the students what they think. They have great ideas.
I would suggest a whole nother webinar on that topic. We could talk about that a lot, but I just want to say thank you for having us today. As you can tell, one of the advantages we have in Fort Bend is Grayle is a dedicated member of the SHAC and an active trustee, but our whole board cares about our kids, and that's really the success of any district, is when the board has the right mindset for the children and the staff aligns their work with the board's vision. Then it's just magic, and things really, it's not perfect every single day because we're all still adults making a lot of big decisions, but it really builds the foundation for great success for the kids, and that's what we're all here to do.
Having a board member like Grayle is incredible. I mean, I have so much respect for all board members who give up their time and are constantly abused, from what I've seen, by parents and the community. It's really a challenging job that you don't get paid for, and to have the dedication and commitment to our children. Thank you, Grayle, and all school board members for your work to help our kids be successful and grow up healthy. And
thank you very much, and thank you for having us today. It's been a pleasure to be here.
all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you all stay safe and healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing some of you on our next webinar.
Thank you.
Y'all have a great day.
Mhm.